How's it going, ladies, gents, and otherwise amazing people? Welcome to another episode of the Coolest Guys You Know podcast. I'm the guy with the glasses and beard, Alex Bagley.
And I'm the guy with the mustache, Jack Efflinger.
And Jack, today we've got an interesting topic here that we're going to discuss.
Yeah.
I know you don't know a whole lot about it. Anything,
really.
Yeah, outside of the name that I've told you.
Yep.
I was first inspired by a video that I saw from the YouTuber Matthew Santoro. A few years ago, I think, and it's about Skinwalker Ranch. And as we said in our, end of the year video, New Year's video, we're taking this in a little bit of a different direction. Yep. So today's going to be a little bit different. And I've done a shit ton of research.
Done a lot of research.
Not even as much as I could have, but after, a few hours of getting things around and organized, we're good to go. Ready to get into it?
I'm ready. Let's do this. I'm excited to learn.
All right. So, my vision.
I thought you were about to give me some creepy music, ooh.
All right. So, a few things about Skinwalker Ranch. Has a movie that's based off of it. It has a reality TV show through the History Channel.
Okay.
There's a book co-authored by an award-winning journalist, and it has been owned by two separate millionaires. The one might be a billionaire. So
wow,
it's got quite the history, and there's more that's buried in here, obviously, even some tidbits that you would not expect, especially towards the end. There's the one story that I was like, whoa. But yeah, so Skinwalker Ranch is located in the Uinta Basin in northeast Utah. It's approximately 480 acres with 3 homesteads, each comprised of about 2 to 3 houses, though almost all of them except for one house has been abandoned and has fallen into ruin. It is isolated 3 miles from the main road. The only path in is this long winding dirt path and cut off from multiple directions by a creek and a huge rock ridge. So the Skinwalker Ranch land was bought in 1994. This is where we're going to begin the story because this is where it kind of gained its popularity. It was bought in 1994 by a Mormon family named the Shermans, comprised of Terry Sherman, who's the father. He was an Arizona native and moved to the Basin area at 17, where he met his wife, Gwen, who was a native of the area pretty much her whole life. And they also had a teenage son and a daughter, a 10-year-old daughter. And before they bought it, the ranch had sat idle for 7 years since the previous owner died. The previous owners, him and his wife, there's not much I could find about them, but from what I could see, they began owning the ranch in 1930, 1934, I think, and they owned it for about 60 years before they died.
Wow, okay.
I couldn't find anything about anybody who owned it before them, but they owned it for quite some time. But it sat idle for 7 years. Little indication of some things maybe not being right.
Okay.
So
yeah, hard to sell.
Yeah. So the family was looking for a quiet place where they could get away and get away from everything and just kind of, lounge around, raise their cattle, be in a quiet place. And they invested quite a bit of money in buying the ranch and also getting these cattle to raise. The place already had a pretty mysterious and spooky history at this point. Most of the locals knew that there was some shady stuff going on in this area. There's a lot of folklore and rumors. And I would imagine, being that, especially since Gwen was a native of the basin, they probably knew a little bit of the stuff, but they were probably just it's going cheap. It's 480 acres, by the way.
Okay.
It's huge.
Yeah.
This place is huge. Like I said, 3 homesteads, 2 to 3 houses in each homestead.
Yeah.
It's a big place. So anyways, they buy this place, and within the first few months, they're renovating the first house, or the house that they're planning on living in. And one strange thing that happened here was that while renovating the house, Terry happened to find nearby in the west pasture, there was this strange depression in the dirt. It was a circular indent with a flat base, and it was pretty few inches deep.
Okay.
He just assumed Maybe like somebody removed a tree or something.
Mm-hmm.
No big deal. So nothing too crazy until they start moving in. They move in all their cattle. And while moving in their cattle, the whole family's outside moving in the cattle. And they see from some tall, high grass near like the edge of the woods, because there's multiple pockets of woods around, a large wolf-like beast come out from the tall grass. And we're talking tall enough on all fours to almost look eye to eye with a human being.
Oh, okay.
Like that big.
Wow.
And this wolf-like beast walks over to the cattle pen where the cattle have just been loaded, grabs a calf by its head and starts trying to pull it through the bars. So Terry grabs his gun, shoots 6 shots at this thing. Doesn't see any blood splatter. Thing looks unfazed, but just decides on its own eventually, drop the calf, walks back into the forest.
Okay.
Terry goes in search. He's an experienced tracker, experienced woodsman. Follows the tracks, expecting to find the thing dead from, the wounds.
Mm-hmm.
Doesn't see any blood the whole time that he's following these tracks. Gets to a small little creek. Footprints stop at the creek. Don't reappear on the other side. No other evidence that the thing was ever there. Goes back. Before he had left, I think they had found like a clump of flesh that had been blown off. When he comes back, though, from trying to track it, the flesh looks like it's like a couple days old. Like it's starting to decay and decompose and deteriorate as if it's been there for a while. So anyways, strange, obviously. Family starts researching to look for what type of wolf it could have been. So like, well, we're living here. We need to know what this thing is that's living nearby. They want to know whether or not it's dangerous for humans. Just trying to get some information on it. And the closest thing that they could find to what they had seen was a artist's depiction or impression of a direwolf. I don't know if you know anything about direwolves.
Not really.
They've been extinct for 10,000 years.
Oh, okay.
So,
is there evidence that they were actually like around before they went extinct, or is it just assumed?
I believe that I actually don't know for sure. I didn't really look in too much to direwolves themselves because this is really the only story that it comes up in. You'll see. But from what I loosely know, I think that they're pretty sure that direwolves were around back then. And that they were huge. They were pretty big. So anyways, so that happens, pretty early on. From there, they Terry starts looking around, sees that the previous owners, they took security pretty highly. They have a bunch of locks on everything. All the windows and doors, heavy padlocks.
Oh, okay.
They have huge chains that they were using for like guard dogs and stuff, just all over the place. Another indication that like, hey, the previous owner knew something was up here.
Right, yeah.
So Terry and his wife and his son, they're constantly, and you'll find this later, that the Uinta Basin is like heavily known for UFO sightings.
Okay.
But they're constantly seeing UFOs, bright lights, or orbs of lights all over the place constantly. There's so many stories. I just kind of generalized it because it's just kind of like at one point, it's like, okay, yeah, they're seeing them a lot.
Right.
So they see those a lot. And the other thing that's going on a lot for them is that, especially after these sightings, cows are getting mutilated quite frequently, like a lot. And they're losing a lot of these cows too. And at least 3 of them die. Some of the injuries that some of the cows were sustain, they get, like I said, mutilated. And some of the ones that would survive but get hurt, they were getting like broken legs, as if they had been like taken from their spot, reapparated up above, and then dropped down and broke their legs.
Oh.
Like those types of injuries. Like they sustained a heavy fall.
Right.
Even though they're still in the middle of the field where they were to begin with. So they start finding a lot of these dead cows that they have like surgically precise holes in like their eyeballs, usually the left eye, and occasionally the rectum. And it's not like an animal bit into them and like tore something out or anything. It's like perfect. like a human or even something more than human is like cutting these things out and
Huh.
taking like a sample or something.
Right.
There's usually no blood around it, even though these things are getting mutilated like this. They usually find no signs of blood. And there's multiple times, like I said, where the cow just disappears, more so than there is turning up dead. One time they followed cow's hoof prints into a field because they were trying to look for it.
Mm-hmm.
And it goes to the edge of the field and disappears. But they look at the spot where the hoof prints stop, and there's like a circular little area of broken twigs and branches. And then when Terry looked up, he could see that the tops of the trees were like cut off.
Huh.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay.
So that's something that's going on. And I will say, we'll get into it later, but cow mutilations are something that also happen a lot in this area.
Mm-hmm.
Same with the UFOs. But another story is Terry had a post digger, for digging holes for fences and whatnot. Mm-hmm. And it turned up missing all of a sudden. So, he looked for it, couldn't find it. So he goes and buys a new one. And right after, like immediately after he buys this new one, he finds the post digger 12 feet up a tree. 12 feet up a tree. And yeah, so that's another thing that started happening is items would disappear and reappear in places that they weren't supposed to be.
Right.
They were using a chainsaw at one point and like set it down to do something else and look back, other side of the field. The chainsaws.
Okay.
Another one would just be, the son had fence posts that he was going to put in the ground. So he like moved him to the side of the field that he needed to, set him down, and he's like, pretty thirsty. Goes in to get a glass of water. Comes back out, post gone. So he's like, well, shit. Starts looking around, hundreds of yards away. He finds the post.
Jesus. Who looks hundreds of yards away? You're like...
I mean, it's a 480-acre farm. You might as well, or ranch, you might as well look everywhere. But yeah, another thing that starts occurring is when they have their backs turned in the house or nobody's around, objects are getting tossed about everywhere. They're hearing strange voices, usually in a language they don't recognize. And at one point, Terry was in a field with their dogs. Probably playing fetch or something. I don't know. I didn't really say in the article. But he's in the field with the dogs, and all of a sudden he started hearing a voice speaking a strange language like 25 feet above him. And he's like looking around trying to figure out what this is, and the dogs are going ballistic, just barking up a storm. And then finally they just dart off towards the house running away. So
wow.
So yeah. Friends would visit, have very strange experiences as well. Hang on, my bad eyesight. Okay, yeah. So they would often see beings outside, usually large beast-looking things like animals, much like they had already seen at this point, or large humanoid figures that were like 8 feet tall and had like dark black hair from what they could make out in the dark. It was always at night, and they usually vanished pretty quickly after they were seen. Prowling around. But the Shermans were pretty hesitant, to sell the place because they'd put so much money in the place. And again, history was pretty well known in the area about the place, so they were probably going to have a hard time selling this place. But they were taking a huge financial hit from all this cattle mutilation and loss. Like, it's pretty hard to make money. And as Terry said in one of the articles, it was almost always some of their best cattle that were getting mutilated or taken. Like the best ones were the ones being targeted.
Wow.
So there's another instance where Terry responded to the death cries, like screeching of a horse, one of their horses. And he goes out to find a huge hyena-like beast just attacking this horse. And before he can grab his gun to go to shoot, the thing just vanishes. Like before his eyes, not like he turned his back and it was gone. Like it just disappeared all of a sudden. And there was evidence that it was there because his horse had a huge claw mark through it.
Jesus.
Yeah. And then I think the last instance that I found that was like noteworthy, then this one was in the Centaura video, was that there was a night where Terry had looked outside and saw an orb of light pass overhead. And And I think I'm imagining that he must have had the door open to do something when he saw it. And before he could even like react to like shut the door or anything, all 3 dogs that they had go rushing out after this thing, barking and whatnot.
Okay.
Middle of the night, by the way. And before Terry can do anything, you know, they rush out, and then the family starts hearing like horrendous like cries from these dogs, like something you wouldn't want to hear from a dog, and then silence. And they are too scared to go after them to figure out what happens. They wait till the morning. Dogs don't come back. Terry goes out looking, follows the dog's tracks till they stop. There's nothing around except for like 3 piles of like greasy mush and no other evidence that the dogs were there.
Oh.
And they never found him again after that.
Wow. Okay.
So, you know, things are pretty wild.
Yeah, I would say so.
So they'd already been talking to like neighbors and stuff, figuring out that like, again, like I said, UFO sightings are pretty common. Cow mutilations are pretty common. But finally, they reached out to a local newspaper. Well, local being Salt Lake City. Okay. The Deseret News newspaper. And a guy named Zach Van Eyck wrote an article for him called the Frequent Flyers with a question mark. It was published in 1996, so this is 2 years after they bought the ranch. I think they didn't really move in to like 95.
Okay.
From what I had seen. And Van Eyck, his paper was pretty laid back, to be honest. The article was. I mean, it still had like some craziness, but a lot of like the harder hitting stories that I just went through with like the dogs and a lot of the animal attacks and stuff, he didn't really touch on. He was more UFO heavy, UFO focused. Also went into the history of the area and stuff. Because since the 1950s, that basin has had hundreds of UFO sightings reported. And like I said, cow mutilations specifically similar to what the Shermans were experiencing with like the precise cuts and all that. That's something that's happening or has been reported throughout the U.S. But they're another thing that's like very big in this area, to the point where the neighbors don't even report it to the cops because the cops are like, we can't really do anything about it, you know? So they just don't even view it as worthy anymore. And the sheriff even said, like in like the last 40 years, I think we've had 20 years, there's been like barely any reports of it. And another thing is that in 1980, a New Mexico study by a former FBI agent named Ken Rommel Jr. led to his decision that cow mutilations were the work of toxic plants and predatory animals. This was FBI agents. Yeah. Grand.
FBI always gives great reports.
I just love that he thinks that I never saw any of the pictures, so I admit that.
Right.
But from the way it was described, there's no way an animal is making that mushroom. And toxic plant, what is a toxic plant doing to pull out a sample of an eye or a piece of flesh from the rectum? Like, how is a plant doing that? I don't understand.
You ever seen a Venus flytrap? I mean, come on.
That cow ate by a Venus flytrap. So, like, neighbors are also hesitant to say anything. Like, Terry's quoted in that Deseret article as saying, I've got a neighbor over here who's reluctant to talk, but he told me they've had trouble since he was a small kid. And he's probably 55. He told me, people will think you're crazy, but you're not. If you are, then we both had the same problem. So, like, a lot of these guys, they don't say anything because, you know, everybody's going to be like, yeah, whatever, you're crazy. You know, they're not there. They're not experiencing things. But almost all the locals and neighbors or visitors of the place, they usually come away with similar stories. Anybody who spends a decent amount of time there usually experiences at least the weird UFO sightings or the cow mutilations. And especially among neighbor ranchers and all that, it's pretty well known that, like, hey, the shit goes down in this area. Okay. It's not just the ranch. There's kind of a radius.
Right.
But, and a couple other stories from the neighbors or the visitors. There's one time that there's some people out there visiting, looking for UFO sightings. And they parked their car and, you know, we're looking out over the mesa looking for a UFO. Go back to their car. Different spot. Car's in a completely different spot. No tire tracks. They're in desert sand. No tire tracks in this desert sand showing that the car was moved. It's just there.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. Similar to how objects were disappearing or reappearing on the ranch. I don't know where exactly in the area that was. I would imagine it isn't on the ranch. The ranch is usually pretty, like I said, closed off, and it's pretty private. But in the area, another farmer had reported that one of his cows one time looked like it had died. Looked like it had been struck by lightning, yet nowhere on the ground was there scorch marks or any sign of a lightning strike. It was just the cow that looked like it had been struck by lightning.
Jesus.
On top of the UFO sightings and kind of orbs of light, there'd also be multiple reports that these lights would also look like portals in the sky. Sometimes even saying that like they could see another sky through the light that appeared, or beams of light were come down from whatever light was appearing in the sky. That's also a common report done by people. But anyways, at this point, with the Deseret article coming out about the Shermans on the farm and what the Shermans, I've said about and experienced,
right?
They get the interest of a pretty established journalist at the time, or at least now he is, named George Knapp. I think actually he didn't win one of his bigger awards in 2008, but he was pretty well known at this time.
Okay.
Named George Knapp. And George Knapp, to give you a little background, has won 5 regional and 2 national Edward R. Maurer Awards, 24 Pacific Southwest Regional Emmy Awards, and 9 Associated Press Mark Twain Awards. He's also won a DuPont Award from Columbia University and 2 Peabody Awards.
Dang.
So, pretty accomplished, pretty well respected. He is a known UFO journalist, and he does have a syndicated paranormal radio show named Coast to Coast AM. But obviously, because of that, this piques his interest. He was especially interested by the Shermans' big quantity and vastly different array of happenings. Like, it's not all just like alien; it's also like big, weird creatures.
Right.
A lot of the visitors thought that the big humanoids almost had like a Bigfoot look to them, like literally. And then you got the paranormal objects flying around in the house. Like literally, almost anything you can think of is happening on this farm.
Wow.
So he writes a series of articles for the Las Vegas Mercury, and those catch on pretty well. They get pretty popular, start making the name pretty big for the ranch, and they attract the attention of Robert Bigelow. And Robert Bigelow, he owns a hotel chain called the Budget Suites and founded Bigelow Aerospace. Aerospace was founded later. But he was a millionaire at this time.
Okay.
And he also has a big background of interest in paranormal and UFOs. Right now, or within the last few years, Aerospace even did work with the Pentagon researching UFOs. And just to throw it in there for you, Bigelow was also a donor for the presidential campaign of DeSantis. So,
lovely.
If that tells you anything about the guy.
Great.
I did see when looking up, because this was just a few days ago, that he was threatening to back out as a donor, which DeSantis just called quits on his campaign. So
lovely.
So the other thing about Bigelow is because of this interest, he formed the National Institute for Discovery Science, otherwise known as, and will be known as for the rest of this, as NIDSCI, which is a group of physicists, biologists, and parapsychologists, because he was very interested in coming at this ranch from a research perspective to see if they can find any evidence or prove any hard facts about the happenings of this.
Right.
But he comes in and buys this ranch from the Sherman family. Thank God for the Shermans.
Oh, yeah.
They got their buyer, and a pretty wealthy one at that. They sold in 1996. So just 6 years after purchasing the farm. And like I said, I don't even think they started living there until 1995. So they got the hell out of there pretty quickly.
Jesus Christ. All right.
And immediately upon taking things over, the NIDSCI find in their research that there's quite a few accounts going all the way back to the 1700s about this place.
Wow.
There's stories and local rumors and all this going back a long time. And one of the accounts they found was about a local UFO sighting where this individual had, I think, been on like ranch grounds maybe, or at least nearby, and had seen a UFO overhead, got bathed in light, died of cancer shortly thereafter.
Whoa. Okay.
Yeah. And immediately the NIDCI find that they put a lot of money into this. This is early 2000s at this point. Or sorry, it would have been 96. It would have been going into the early 2000s. Yeah. They just get rid of the ranch later. But I immediately found, after pouring all this money into the tech and stuff, they have high-tech cameras, motion detectors, everything, that all of them are having, lo and behold, technical issues quite frequently. Anytime they're trying to catch something, shuts off. And stuff wouldn't happen until everything shut down.
Right.
So most of their accounts are eyewitness accounts reliant. And they hadn't had too many crazy things happen, I don't think, in the beginning, kind of the similar stuff, UFO sightings and all that. But one night, they had built up these watchtowers because they wanted to be able to, get a better view.
Right.
There's a scientist on one of these watchtowers, and, he's doing his thing, looking around, and realizes, hey, there's two yellow things over there that have been staring at me for a little while. And he starts looking and thinks, hey, those are eyes. And he's like, wait a minute. That's a body, like a human, up in that tree. Weird. And it looks like it's been looking at me for a while.
Yeah.
So him and these other scientists immediately, go to look at the tree. Of course, thing's gone. But left on the ground underneath the tree is a print that looks like it has massive talons. And that was all they found. So, yeah, tech issues, like I said, are happening. And the team starts to believe that whatever phenomena is going on in the area seems to be aware that it's being observed and doesn't want to be observed, and is even taunting them.
Okay.
One of the times that they had a technical issue, there was caught on camera was like these skyscrapers were like shooting up out of the ridge and the trees. Like they looked almost human built, and it looked like a human city, but then it kind of faded away. That was one of the things that they caught on camera. I'm not even sure if it was recorded and stored away anywhere.
Okay. Wow.
And then they also reported seeing at one point a partial portal or light that looks like a partial portal open up in the sky. And again, they thought they saw another sky in that light.
Yeah.
And then a beam of light shot down, and what they thought was a humanoid figure emerges from that light and then crawls into the high grass.
Okay.
Yeah.
Jesus. That's insane.
And they constantly reported hearing, or some of the scientists constantly reported hearing what they thought were like machine-like noises coming from underneath the ground, which Sherman had also been quoted in the Deseret article. This is kind of a loose connection, but it's just kind of funny to me. Sherman had said, for a long time, we wondered what we were seeing, if it was something to do with a top secret project. Like they kind of, him and the Shermans kind of thought that maybe the government was doing something.
Okay,
here.
yeah.
I'm not saying that that's necessarily true. I just think it's funny that they were hearing machine noises and the Shermans were suspecting government involvement. So, another thing that the NIDSCI, I'm getting it, had experienced was cow mutilations, just like before. One of which was even in broad daylight and was with a cow that had just been seen minutes earlier. And then when they turned around, mutilated.
Jesus.
Yeah. So 4 years go by, team's out there doing the research. Finally, they pack up, they leave. They release statements. Like I said, they have no hard facts or evidence. But they did say that there seems to be something inhuman here. It seems to know that it's being observed, and it seems to be taunting those who are trying to observe it. So they haven't published any of their findings, at least as far as I know. Again, there's no really hard facts or anything, so that's probably why.
Yeah.
But they stopped in 2004 entirely. The NIDSCI disbanded in 2004. Bigelow still owned the ranch until 2016, when it was bought anonymously by someone under the title of adamantium real estate, which I don't know if you know the term adamantium, but that's
I mean, isn't that the Wolverines?
Yeah. And then 4 years later, in 2020, a man by the name of Brandon Fugel announces that he is the man behind adamantium real estate, and that he bought the ranch and is producing a reality TV show for the History Channel.
Okay.
A little background for Fugel. He is the chairman of Colliers International in Utah, which is just real estate. Mm-hmm. And he is quoted, I believe, on the History Channel, or I think it's the History Channel Fugel like TV show site, as being interested in the mysteries of our universe. So again, kind of another guy that has like a little bit of background, and again has a lot of money. Yeah. But History Channel, Fugel, they come in. They establish pretty similar things to what was already being done with Bigelow. Science. They have massive amounts of equipment on set, and a big team. And they kind of pick up where Bigelow left off. And in this Deseret article that came out in this past year, October 26, 2023, called Uncovering the Secret of Skinwalker Ranch by Meg Walter. Meg visited the ranch and was involved with the team. And a little side note: the head of security goes by the nickname Dragon. By the way, thought you'd be interested in that.
That's great.
The other article, I read an article from Utah.com about this, and he was just constantly bringing up the fact that there's a guy named Dragon on the TV show. He's just like, there's a man named Dragon. He's like, why would anyone want to go by the name Dragon?
I think that's a really cool name, personally.
Okay, so, and then these people, as Meg is being transported out to the ranch, are, going through some of their stories. I will say, disclaimer, I haven't seen the Netflix or the History Channel series. Mm-hmm. So I don't really know what goes on in the series. This is the extent that I know is from this article.
Okay.
But anyways, Meg's getting some of their stories in. And the the superintendent told her a story about a night that the cameras went down, and he was sent out to the command center that they had to see what was wrong, get the cameras back up online. So he goes out with his wife. They get out there, and as soon as they get out there, the cameras kind of come back up online. But as they're walking around, they hear like a noise in the back room. So they go to investigate. And as they go to investigate, they hear this voice say, you need to leave now. And they're like, okay, yeah, we're going to listen to that.
Yeah.
They leave. And as they get to the car, they realize that their phones are both frozen and not working. And they don't start working again until they've left the property.
Wow. Okay.
So, yeah, there's that. Again, the tech issues. There was one guy who said that, he's watching the cameras the one night because they kept getting a motion detector alert on his phone because it was going straight to his phone, notifying him. And so he went out to check. Can't find anything on the cameras, and the thing is going off for 5 hours saying that there's motion detector in the area that he's in. And then finally, he got frustrated from not being able to figure out what it was and just said out loud, like, if you're trying to tell me something, just tell me something. And the camera immediately starts melting down. Like, the screen starts, like, drooping down because I saw this picture.
Okay.
And because he snapped a picture as he saw it just because he was so reflexive. But the screen, like, it's a kind of a common tech issue that can happen where the screen gets distorted. But it was just weird because of the way some of the words were left on screen. There's one, so the bottom used to say in the bottom right corner, one camera live or living. Yeah. I think it was living, something like that. But the way that it drooped down, it just says living. Don't really know if there's that much there, but the article specified it. Okay. I don't know. They made that seem like it was a big deal. Maybe, maybe not. It was a weird technical error, and apparently the guy kind of shopped it around, couldn't really find any answers for why it happened. Fugel himself, even though I said he had like some interest in the mysteries of the universe and all that, he said he was a little skeptical and thought that there would definitely be a natural explanation for everything. Didn't really think there was like necessarily something beyond human limits in terms of explaining. But within 6 months, he was looking out at the mesa the one day, and clear as day, at least to him, and very large, very near to him, he saw a 50-foot wide, approximately, silver object hovering in the sky.
Okay.
And that was about the turning point for him where he's like, oh, yeah, there's definitely something going on.
Yeah.
So, yeah, the team is out there working, and they even get a visit from Post Malone.
Okay.
Yeah.
Showing up.
Yeah. Post Malone decided to come take a visit. They let him out. They welcomed him in, came in with like a convoy of black SUVs.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And the plan was for him to be there for the day and then spend the night in Homestead. I believe it was 2. I don't think I have it written down, but I believe he's planning to spend the night in Homestead 2. And Homestead 2 and 3 are the ones that visitors have a lot of complaints about. They have complaints of acute medical episodes. You know, they didn't specify what. I'm assuming it's probably relating to heart issues or anything that's kind of a chronic illness. I would suspect kind of has a flare up is what they're alluding to, as well as severe temperature drops and specters going through walls. It was so bad that Fugel's wife will refuse to go anywhere near Homestead.
Okay.
So Post Malone comes out. Supposed to spend the whole night. They get into the night, and the head of security, Dragon.
Yep. Dragon and Post Malone on the ranch.
Yes. Dragon reported that Post Malone packed up in the middle of the night, him and his whole convoy, and left because of the experiences that they had at this homestead.
God.
So, yeah, the team has all this data that they've been collecting, and one of the things they noticed is that there's a lot of activity in what they began calling the triangle, which is an area between the command center that they had set up and the homesteads, and is like a few feet away from the mesa. And it's marked off by dirt paths that are intersecting in 3 different corners.
Okay.
And from the conclusions that they drew from the data, they think that this is the area with the highest rate of strangeness going on. That's where everything tends to be going on. So yeah, that's about where research was for what I could find.
Mm-hmm.
That was where Fugel's team is the one in control right now. You know, like I said, this was written in 2023.
Right.
So yeah, what do you think? Oh, sorry. There's one last thing.
Okay.
One last thing that Fugel's team believes. The writer Meg was talking about at the end of the article, because she was looking at these homesteads, which were so bad that like ceilings were collapsed and, you know, pretty in a mess.
Yeah.
And she'd been so excited about like potentially something happening, but nothing had really happened. And Fugel's team told her that they believed that that was because they came in with a positive, you know, outlook. And it seemed like anytime somebody came in with a positive outlook or a positive mindset, they usually didn't have any bad experiences, or they might even have a positive experience going on, spiritual experience. Meanwhile, it seems like the downtrodden, you know, the ones that are in their bad status of mind, are the ones being preyed on very badly in the area.
Interesting.
They didn't really give any research to back that up. It seems like it's more just kind of like something they noticed or believed. But yeah, that's the extent of things so far.
Wow. I mean, I have to say, you know, because I'm, you know, Jack the skeptic of all things, everything. I don't think any of it's true.
Yeah. Well, we can go
because there's no evidence of anything, right? Yeah. Like, if you have it going on for this long and you can't get anything on evidence, like, come on, you know. Come on, where's Mulder and Scully? That's what I want to know. Fox Mulder and Dana Scully.
This does sound like I've never seen
X-Files.
My mind is all Skinwalker Ranch. All right, I've been immersed.
Yeah. I get that.
Yeah, I've never seen X-Files, but this does sound like something.
Oh
X-Files.
yeah, absolutely.
Honestly, like reading about the Uinta Basin itself, when I was talking about like all the UFOs, like this is basically where any of your tropes for aliens are coming out of the Uinta Basin. Like anything from that stuff, or even some of the tropes of like desert creepy stuff comes from this as well. So we can go through some theories then. Okay. Since you already gave your opinion. I think you're probably going to agree with the first opinion then.
Okay.
Which is that everybody's faking it and they're all just trying to make money.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
One thing about this, at least with the Sherman family, like I said, the Shermans sold to a millionaire, but they sold for only $200,000, a 480-acre ranch. $200,000 at the time was like the price of like a nice home.
Did they say how much they bought it for?
It did not say how much they bought it for, but I'd imagine it was probably low.
Yeah.
Considering the reputation that it had. But still, $200,000, and they moved out pretty quickly. Again, less than 2 years. And I think it was pretty quickly after Bigelow contacted them. Because the article was written in 96, they sold in 96. Mm-hmm. That's a pretty quick transaction to occur. It seemed as soon as Bigelow was interested, they're like, yeah, here you go. So there's that. Also, I'll throw this in here. So the writer for the Utah.com article that I read had some jokes. And his for this theory was the people that believe in this theory are the same as the people who raise their hands at the end of class to remind the teacher that we have homework.
I agree. Actually, never mind. I was probably one of those kids. But
and the other thing is just there's local corroboration of these stories, in the area. Everybody's kind of experiencing the UFO sightings and the cow mutilations. Everybody in the area is like, stay the fuck away from Skinwalker Ranch. So another obvious theory is extraterrestrials, aliens visiting the place.
Right.
There's UFO sightings, bright lights, strange voices and figures being spotted. There's surgical precision and all of the mutilation and the electronic disturbances.
Yeah.
There's a lot of evidence for that.
I'm assuming one of the other theories is government.
Actually,
because like phone reception gets cut off. Maybe they cut everything off. They cut technology things off. They hear mechanical noises.
Yeah, I actually did not see that theory in any of the articles brought up. Probably just because...
You'd probably be able to tell.
Bigelow's involvement, maybe?
The gigolo, yeah.
Yeah.
Bigelow the
gigolo. Yeah. Another theory is interdimensional visitors. Because, again, everybody thinks there's like portals being opened up all over the place. Parallel universe or dimension of some sort. This one, you might actually maybe even be interested in this one as well, is geophysical processes causing brains to hallucinate in the area.
I don't know what any of those words.
Any of them. Okay, so this comes from something that Michael Persinger came up with, a little theory of his, which is that geophysical forces such as tectonic plate shifting, seismic activity, and geomagnetic fields can cause parts of the brain that deal with hallucinations to be activated. And one of the things about this area in particular in the basin is that they have this thing called gilsonite, which is a resource originating from the solidification of petroleum. And this resource is heavily mined in this area. And I think it's pretty rare to where it's like the basin is like the best source of it.
Okay.
So there was something in one of the articles saying that, maybe this was, or people have at least said that could be potentially the cause of hallucinations. And then the writer of the Utah article also put, for this one, he put, this theory is pretty out there, but this theory has the biggest words in it, so that makes it most likely. And then another one would be the Native American myth curse thing.
Okay.
So skinwalkers themselves come from Native American myth. They are of Navajo origin, though the land that Skinwalker Ranch is on was inhabited by the Ute tribe.
Okay.
But the Navajo were like bordering on it. Mm-hmm. Skinwalker, the term, it means in Navajo, by means of it, it goes on all fours. That is the definition of a skinwalker. Or not definition, but the translation.
Right.
Definition would be that skinwalkers are trickster entity. Wow. Gonna take a step back from that one.
Take a drink of water here, bud. That one was rough.
I've been talking for a while.
Trickster entity, probably.
Yes, they are trickster entities or witches that are able to change their skin to look like animals and people. And they often shift between being upright and on all fours. They could be deadly. They could be violent and even deadly. And it is believed, legend says, that the Navajo at one point unleashed skinwalkers on the Utes in one of their conflicts. The ridge the ranch is next to is known as Skinwalker Ridge, and some believe it to be the path of the skinwalker. And it's also a rumor or folklore or whatever you want to call it in this area that anyone who digs into the ground disturbs the evil spirits there. And again, A lot of heavy resource mining going on here.
Right.
And if you remember, there was the pole digger.
Yeah.
That got dug into the ground by the Shermans. And then that was kind of one of the big points in the beginning of their time there.
Yeah.
Or the fence post, too.
Mm-hmm. There's also the chainsaw, though, which wouldn't have dealt with that.
Yeah, but disturbs the evil spirits, like awakens them, basically, would be what they're trying to get at. Not necessarily that everything comes from that.
Okay.
You get what I mean?
Yeah.
Not every activity is directly linked to it. It's that they've been disturbed and awoken. So, yeah. And then one of the other claims, this isn't a theory, this is just a claim in general, is that whatever's going on there is a disease that is spreading and growing in its area of control. That whatever is trying to enter the world there is increasing its domain. And some even think that when they go home from this area, any visitors and whatnot, that they are followed home by whatever was there. And that they are deeply deeply disturbed and have a feeling of unease when they're at home. And it's similar to the same way they felt on the ranch while they were there. So, yeah. I mean, I was going to ask you what you believe, but you already kind of gave that, and I kind of assumed that was going to be your belief.
Yes, I'm very predictable. You know,
I don't really know how I feel about it. I definitely don't think it's just like everybody's an idiot or that they're all faking it. That's not necessarily what I believe. I don't know. I think it's mysterious, and I like that. But I don't necessarily I think it's just such a wild thing with like same as what George Knapp got drawn by, like the variety of things. It's like it hits paranormal, it hits alien, it hits Bigfoot, even large beasts like dire wolves, which are supposed to be extinct. It hits on like devil, hell, whatever the heck you want to call it. Hits on interdimensional stuff. Like there's just and Native American myth. Like there's so much going on.
Which is why I think it's fake, because all of those combined in one ranch.
It's so loose.
Who would look for a chainsaw
Malone visited.
if it's that far away?
It has to be fake. Post Malone visited. There's a man named Dragon there. A DeSantis supporter? Come on.
Dragon is definitely a skinwalker.
He's in disguise. He's the one going around screwing up all the cameras. Yes. Oh, man. Which theory, if you had to pick one out of all the theories that I listed, which you think is the most likely?
What was the last one you listed?
Or the Native American myth.
Native American myth.
Or the physical process, or the aliens, interdimensional, or the sellout faking it.
Probably, I guess, interdimensional. The cancer ray is pretty interesting.
See, that one I thought you'd be like, well, he probably had cancer before he even hit the ray. I thought you were immediately going to attack on that.
I think that's kind of an interesting device. I mean, a cancer ray.
The one I thought was going to be most like in Jack's brain, like, oh man, he just had cancer before he got hit by this ray. But you're like,
fucking idiot.
That sounds pretty interesting.
Yeah. Wow, but that's a hell of a story. God
wait,
damn.
wait. So which theory was it? You said, interdimensional. Yeah. I wonder what theory I would. God dang it. What theory?
What?
Not going to cough.
Then don't do it.
Not going to cough. Okay. Which theory I would pick?
Yeah.
I'd say interdimensional, if anything, just because of, again, the variety.
Yeah.
The Native American myth is a big one for me. Because there's things about like Native American stuff is just like, I don't touch that. Like if they are talking about curses and stuff, I'm like, I don't know how it works, but you guys are normally right. You guys know America better than I do.
That's true. That's true. I mean, we're Americans. What do you mean?
Okay. And last question. This is a big one. Would you visit the ranch if you had an opportunity?
Yeah, sure. Nothing would happen. You'd go there and literally nothing would happen.
I would love for us to go out there and then everything happens to you.
Literally, we wouldn't see a single thing happen.
What? Actually,
we would see something happen. We'd sneak up on it and it'd just be Dragon in like a costume.
It's all Dragon.
Yeah.
The whole time. It was Dragon.
It was Dragon the whole time.
A long con. Actually, I do have another question. Which of the stories disturbs you the most? Especially if it was true.
Right. Probably, I mean, the stuff getting like lifted up and just being like a cow being lifted up and dropped.
That poor fucking cow.
Yeah.
Like, what the fuck? What the fuck? Holy shit. Wait. He was like, oh my God, I'm a fucking god. All the cows were like, worship. He's chosen. And then he just falls down and and they're like, oh, he sucked.
Big profit.
Big profit. I don't know. I think it's between, for me, either the dog one. That's just so sad to me. If like them getting just obliterated for chasing a light,
right?
That one's sad, and then the eyes one just sticks with me for some reason.
Yeah,
the yellow eyes. Honestly, being so immersed in this the last few days.
Be an owl.
I knew you were gonna say that.
What do you mean?
I knew you were gonna say it was an owl.
What do you mean?
Because I also thought like could be an owl, but they did.
Yellow eyes,
again,
talons. Owls are huge.
Owls are pretty big, but they're
huge. What do you mean?
Yeah, they're pretty big, but still, he said a human-sized one. But again, this is where eyewitness stuff comes into
humans
question.
come in all sizes.
So you're saying
if you see a baby, that's technically human size.
It was like human size.
It was like human size.
It's like human size, man. But yeah, no, getting so immersed in this, the thing that I ran into was that I started doing research so late on this that I kind of ran out of time. Right. And I had to cram everything together. That's why I wasn't able to do the series. The History Channel series is available on Netflix, but I wasn't able to get to it or the audiobook or book. I was going to listen to it as an audiobook. But just being so immersed in it, I walked home Saturday, I think it was, because that's when I started doing all the research. Mm-hmm. Or I didn't walk home. I got home.
Okay. I was like,
got out of my car and just had to walk to the door. And all I could think was just yellow eyes just looking at me. Because I was so convinced. I was like, what if me doing research just attracts the attention of whatever it is? And it just starts coming after me. Which was part of the reason I didn't watch Netflix series that night. I was like, I need to step away.
Yeah.
I need to step away. So, yeah. I might visit that. If I wouldn't mind. If I got the opportunity, I'd have to, because like they don't let very many people out there. It's pretty heavy security. They keep people away. So yeah.
If Post Malone
if we get we get the Post Malone treatment, we're not wimping out like Post Malone.
No.
We're staying
He's
there
a baby.
the whole night. And we don't need no convoy with us.
No, we don't need
probably
had
like these big muscular guys.
Yeah, he probably had like 10 dragons.
And they all he had 10 dragons with him. But not dragons, but dragons.
Yeah, dragons.
Wouldn't that just be more skinwalkers then? He brought more skinwalkers with him. And then he realized that they're all skinwalkers and had to leave.
And also,
who reported that he left? Dragon.
Exactly. Dragon drove him off.
Another theory. Another theory enters the mix.
Write that down.
All right. I think this went pretty well. I think it was pretty good. I'm interested whether or not I'll be able to find a topic that I like as much as this one.
Yeah.
I think this had a lot of depth to it. Where some other topics, I think
I was surprised how much depth this one had to it.
Yeah, well, it helped that it continued into
especially from something that's only like really from the 90s.
I was so surprised it was the 90s. I was like, no. I thought when I remembered the video, I was like, it must have been like 70s.
Right, because it sounds kind of like that.
But then he said 90s, and I was like, oh my God. Like, that was only 4 years before I was born.
Yeah.
There's not much known about the Shermans, at least from what I could find, outside of like the article and then, the story in general. Mm-hmm. But there was one picture, and this was what kind of humanized it for me, of Terry, and he had like I don't think he had sunglasses on. I think I'm filling that detail in. But he had like a trucker hat. I think he had like a goatee. And then he had like a flannel shirt, and there was like one of those old full-size vans that are like panel vans in the background, and just him standing there cross-armed looking off, I think, on the ranch.
Okay.
But yeah, I was like, oh yeah, this place is real. This was a real human being living on this ranch and telling these stories.
But also nothing happened to him.
Yeah. Yeah.
They lost a couple dogs, so what,
A couple dogs, couple cows.
Couple cows.
A lot of money.
Also, who's raising cows here anymore? Why are we still raising cows? Find a different
It was the 90s. What do you mean now?
Find a different industry, guys. Come on.
This is what you get for trying to raise. Yeah. Are you the one going around mutilating the cows? You're anti-cow?
Yeah, I'm anti-cow. This is what you guys get for raising cows here.
All right. Yeah, if you're interested in this story, there is, and you want to know more about the Skinwalker Ranch, we're going to have all of my research links are going to be in the description below.
Yep.
And then I've already shouted out Matthew Santora's video was a big one, at least for getting my interest. And there was a lot of the meat of it came from that video, but I filled in with some articles. There's the History Channel series that I talked about, the reality series. It's called The Secret of the Skinwalkers, and it's on Netflix. And then there's the book by George Knapp, the journalist that I talked about, as well as Colm Kelleher, who has a PhD in biochemistry and was a part of that Bigelow team, the NIDSCI.
Yeah.
I think he was like the head of the team. And the book is called Hunt for the Skinwalker. So, yeah.
Wow. A lot of research.
Didn't make you a believer, huh?
No.
Yeah,
No.
I didn't think I would. I didn't think I would.
Owls and dragon. Come on.
Owls and dragons. Oh my. All right. That's it for this episode. We'll see you next time. Make sure to like, subscribe, share, comment, engage.
Follow, do it all.
Yeah, and we'll be back with the next episode.
Yeah.
See you later.
Have a good one.